Hello everyone. Today we will see about what is the usage of context variable and what is context group. Context variables are nothing but we will use this in Talend jobs to replace the hard-coded values. And there are multiple ways to pass the values to the context variable. Either manually or dynamically, you can pass during runtime or compile time, we can pass the values. The main advantage of context variable is we can avoid the hard coded values. Wherever example, you have a code where you are hard coding like year greater than or equal to 2019, 2020, currency, country equal to US, language equal to US. Any hard coded filters, if you have in your code, all those hard coded filters can be replaced with the variables. So it looks dynamic and modification become easy. And a group of variables we are categorizing and we can consider them as a context group. For example, uh, all the date related variables, you can call it as date context group, and you can allocate all the variables to that context group. So we will group the variables and we will allocate to a context group. The main advantage of context group is grouping the variables basically. So the related variables we can consider as one group and we can provide the name. So it is like ease of use. Basically, the context group is ease of use. Let us see step by step how we can utilize that in Talend job and how we can pass the values to the variables. So here I'm creating a job. I'm creating a standard job and providing the name as job underscore. I'm providing the topic name here. Our topic is context variable. So I'm using the topic called context variable. And what is the purpose? Purpose of this job. Purpose of this job is like, for example, I'm writing it as employee data load. Click on finish. So here, this is a place where we write our designer, we can call it as, and we write all our, basically we develop our ETL job using components which are available here in the palette. And at that bottom, you can see there is a tab called context. And this is a place where you can create the context variable. This is a place where you can create the variable. For example, let me create a basic job. Let me create a basic job. I'm using, I want to load the data. I want to load the data from an employee table. I want to load the data from employee table. Okay, I have taken this. And let me cross check whether this is working. So best option is you can use tlogro component. You can use tlogro component. Right click here, main, and click on this. Then we will know whether it is working or not. Yes, it's working. And here, if you go to the component, here I'm seeing the host name, port number, which are hard coded. So I want to replace these hard coded values with the variable. In that particular situation, we can create a variable. For example, I'm creating a context variable. Okay. And here in this component, and I need a variable for host name, I need variable for port, I need variable for database, I need variable for user password. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 variables. So let me pass this. The first one is username, host name, port, host name, port, username, service name. This we call it as service name basically in Oracle perspective. And I'm creating one more called service name, and one more is password. So 5 variables I have created. The main purpose of this 5 variable is to remove this hard-coded values, whatever we provided here. Instead of writing the values manually, I want to allocate the values to a variable, and I want to utilize those variables in the place of host name, database, port number, service name, etc. So here, in order to edit this, for example, right now I created the variable, but I did not allocate any value. Okay, let us see how to allocate. Before that, how can I write the variable here? So when it is in repository, you cannot edit here. It will not allow you to edit. Why? Because this connection details are taken from this metadata, which is available here. Here. So this example, you can see DB Oracle service name. It is taking from this DB connection. It is taking from this DB connection repository. So instead, when you place the cursor, it will allow us to change built-in, or else manually you can drop. Okay, you can expand this list and you can change to built-in, then it will allow us to modify. And here in the place of host name, we need to write context dot. Our variable is in lowercase. Yes, copy this and paste it here. And here also, basically the text always we write in double quotes. And if it is a variable, you should not use double quotes. Context dot, otherwise it will consider it as a, if you use a double quote, system will consider it as a string instead of a variable. Port, and this is the context dot service name, and here I used context dot username. So first all these variables you need to create. Save this first. Now run this. I did not allocate the values, so definitely this job should not run. It should throw error. Why? Because the host name, port number, all the variables are having empty, so it should not. Yes, see here. As a variables doesn't have any value and you used the variable, and right now it is trying to establish the connection. When you run this job, what happens is like it is trying to establish a connection to the Oracle database because it needs to pull the data from EMP table, and EMP is available in Oracle database. So before fetching the data, it needs to establish a connection. But this variable is having empty values. Basically, it doesn't have any value and it couldn't able to establish the connection. That was the reason you received an error called network. The network adapter could not establish the connection. Why? Because we did not provide the correct values. So now let me provide the value. Example, I am providing local host. Sorry, username is BA sample. And the host name is, my database host name is local host. And port number of my database is 1521. And service name is GWHPROD, and password is also same for me, BA sample. So I have, and here instead of using string, if this password, if you don't want to make it visible to other people, there is an option called password. So it will not be visible, but it will have the value as BA sample, but no one can see this. Okay, so now I will run this. Now it has a value. So definitely it has to fetch the data. Until or unless if we have written wrong value, see it is working. Now let me write a wrong value and see whether what error it throws. Example, I am providing a wrong username. I am providing a wrong username, which is BA sample 1. Now if you see, it should throw error. It should not return any data. Yeah, you can see the error, invalid username password. It is trying to establish the connection. All the required details are available, but the username is wrong. So it is trying to connect with that wrong username, and we got the login access denied error. So here I created the variables manually, and I allocated the values manually. So this is a simple example of a context. Now you have around 30 jobs. In every 30 jobs, why I need to add these variables manually? Why I need to add all these variables manually in all 30 jobs? Instead, you can create this as a group. You can create this as a group. Here you can see In the drop down, you can see context is there. I can create a group. I can create a group. I can create the context group. For example, there may be multiple related groups like calendar, year, month, date, etc. can be allocated to a group called calendar. But these variables are related to a database connection, and that database is sales database. If you know the details exactly, then I'm considering it as sales, and this is the Oracle connection. I'm writing it as Oracle underscore sales, or this is an HR database. Why? Because it is related to employees. So I'm considering it as HR, Oracle HR, and connection details. So I'm providing the variable name as Oracle HR connection. Then I need to add the variables. So one is for username, one is for host name, port, service name, and password. So in this password, I want to provide the data type as password so that whatever the value I'm writing here, no one will be able to see. Click on. I did not allocate any values to this context yet. Okay. In this context group, if you see, I did not allocate any value. I did not allocate any value yet. All the variables are empty. Okay. So now all these variables you can delete. Yes. So instead of adding the each variable manually, you can pull the context here. You can pull the context here. Automatically the variables are available. Clear? Or else you have a plus symbol. You have a plus symbol. Sorry, give me 1 second. This will add the variables, but there is one more option. If you select this option, then it will show all the list of the context groups available in our project. If you select this option, it will show all the list of the context groups available in our project. Then you can require the context group, you can select and click on OK. That will be added to your job, or you can add manual. Okay. So here I did not allocate the values. Either you can allocate the values manually. So let us see. Let us allocate the values manually one more time. So my username is BS sample and my host name is localhost, and my 1521, and the service name is DWHPROD, and the password is BA sample. Okay, click on finish. Yes. And I can drag this to here. All the variables with valuables are available right now. And I have used the connection details instead of passing the connection details manually. I used a variable, whatever I declared in the context group: host name, service name, port, username, host name, username, port, service name, password. Okay, let me see now. Click on run. Yes, it's run. So this is called context group. Allocating the required variables, related variables, grouping them and providing them. The main advantage is ease of use. You can drag and drop to the required jobs. Need not to add or create the variables again and again in every job. You can create a context group, create the variables inside that, just pull that context group to the required job. So it will make our job easy. It is of ease of use. This is the main advantage of the context group, and basically the advantage of the context variable is it avoids the like example hard-coded values. The main advantage here, if you see, for example, I have 50 jobs, 50 ETL jobs. In all 50 ETL jobs, I am using username as BA sample. And in future, if the password is got modified, then I have to modify either at repository level. But if each and every ETL job is not provided at repository, it is having built-in, then I need to go and modify every job. If every job is having enabled as built-in option, then whatever the changes I did in repository will not reflect here. If every ETL job is changed to property type as built-in, and I hard-coded the values as example, my database password I hard-coded as one for like BA sample. That is a hard-coded password. In all 50 ETL jobs, I have the password as BA sample. Okay. Now, if I need to modify the password, the database password has changed now. Now, when I need to modify in all 50 ETL jobs, I need to go manually because all 50 jobs are not developed using repository connection. It has developed using built-in. So instead of modifying all 50 ETL jobs, you can provide the variables and you can create the variables in context group, and all those variables you can utilize here. So if you change the password here, it will reflect in all ETL jobs. So here right now, I did not use the variable here. So let me use the variable context called password. So in password also I have used now variable. So this is the basic. But here the disadvantage is you're passing the values. Okay. So I have written password in capital letter, but my password in lowercase letters. So go here, change. Run this now and cross check. So right now the disadvantage here is you are passing the values manually. Instead, I don't want to pass the values to this spelling is wrong. PSSWO. Spelling is wrong. PSS. Okay. I'm updating for all the ETL jobs, so it will update. Yes, the spelling is wrong. Okay. And let me go to the component, select the CMP, go to the component and PSSWORD. Okay. So the variable I have provided wrongly, wrong spelling. That was the reason it was not identifying password as a variable. Instead, it is identifying as a string, but string cannot be without double quotes. Yes, now it is working. Now it is working. But here, if you see, I passed the values manually, but I don't want to pass these values manually. Then what is the other option? I don't want to pass these values manually. Then what is the other option? There are two ways. You can pass the values either implicit or explicit. There are two ways to pass the values to a variable. One is implicit, one is explicit. Implicit indicates you can pass the values to a variable at project level. So for all ETL jobs, it will use the same value. If you pass a value as an implicit approach, there are two ways to pass the values to a variable. One is implicit, one is explicit. If you are passing it as implicit, then all ETL jobs, it will utilize the same value. But you have a situation that for 10 jobs, I want to pass a value as 10. For remaining jobs, I want to pass a value as 20. That means the variable I want to utilize each and every job individually. Then that is called explicit option. During runtime, we will pass the value. Okay. So right now, first we will see how it is at implicit. Implicit is always set at project level. Implicit is always set at project level. For example, go to here, we will see the step-by-step approach. Go to file, edit project properties. Here you have an option. If you see, these are the four options you will be seeing: build, general, designer, job setting. If you expand the job setting, here you will find implicit context load. Enable the checkbox. And here you can see there are two options available. One is from file, the other one is from database. That means you can allocate the variable, okay, from a file or a database. So I'm using a file approach. I'm using file approach. And I got this by default because I have already utilized for other jobs purpose. That was the reason I got this text manually, but no problem. I'm removing this. So there are two options. One is from database and from file. And when you are selecting from file, basically you need to have a file. Let me show you that in D drive, I have a folder and where I have a database connection details. You can see here I have maintained username, password, hostname, port number. Every variable I provided it as a separate row and value. It's a key value approach basically. Variable name, value. It's a variable name, value. Variable name, value. Variable name, value. This is the approach I followed here. And this one, I can allocate all these variables as an implicit approach. And whatever the variables inside the job I have, it will utilize the value available in this. So example, right now I'm selecting from file, then I'm selecting here database connection details, click on open. And here, do you have any heading? No. And how the fields are separated using comma. If it is separated using pipe symbol, then here you need to select field separator as pipe. But right now I have comma because in my file, each and every row you can, if you see, every field is separated by comma. So I need to provide the file path. Then each and every field is separated by comma or pipe. You can select whatever the option you are using in the file, the same you can use here, the separator. This is called implicit. Then I am selecting this. Then this will, like it is across all ETL jobs, it will utilize the same value. Okay. Right now you can see I did not add any value to this context group. Okay. I don't have any value. If you see, the variables are looking empty. Okay. Now let me run this. So here, if you see, my password is wrong. Be a sample one. So you definitely we need to get error. Login denied. Null password. Let me give this one. Okay. Username, password, hostname, localhost service. I got that. I got the data now. I don't have any values in this variable. I don't have any values in this variable, and I did not allocate values to this context group. Okay. I did not allocate the values to this context group, but still my file has 5 variables, all 5 variables. Whatever the value allocated this BA sample to username, the same name has to available here. Example, right now I'm using here username 1. Okay. Then the variable name is different now. You can see here. In the file I'm using username and here I'm using username 1. What happens you see practically? Error. What is error? Parameter username is a new parameter. Here you are seeing a username parameter that is not added to the job. So that means whatever the parameters available here, those should be available in this. Clear? For example, I am going here, edit connection, edit context group, click on next. Username I am removing from here. Okay, I am selecting finish. I'm selecting finish. So that means I have only 4 variables right now. And in EMP, instead of using username, let me pass the username manually. Instead of variable, let me pass the username value manually. So that means in this job, I need a variable value for host name, port number, username, password. So I should give me 1 second. Context dot service name. This is service name, and here be a sample. Okay. Now, if you see, I need value for host name, port number, service name, password. Username I manually passed, so I allocated only four variables. If you see, I allocated only four variables, but in the file there are five variables. Now you see what happens. Be a sample is not recognized. The reason is text always needs to be provided in double quotes, string value. Yes. So this is a way to allocate values to a variable. So username, if you see, you got an error that there is a parameter called username, but I did not utilize that. Parameter username is a new parameter of implicit context. Okay, which is available in the file, but the value which is available in the username, it is trying to allocate to one of the variable, but it is not finding any variable called here username. So whatever the parameters available here, if you are maintaining the same name here, then only it will allocate the value. Example here in the place of host name, I am using host name 1, then it cannot allocate local host to the variable. It can allocate only when your parameter in the file and your variable are matching. Right now, if you see, username is not available in the context loop. That was the reason system is trying to find a parameter like username parameter is a new parameter of implicit file. It is considering as a new parameter. So that means it is showing an indication that username variable is not available in the list. But for me, username is not really required because I already hard coded it. That was the reason system able to still run this job. So this is one of the approach, but in every job, it will utilize the same value. You cannot change the value because you passed it as an implicit context option. And in implicit context option, there are two ways. As I told you, you can pass using a file and I can pass from the database also. For example, here in my Oracle database, I have a table which has values as key and value. Basically, I need to mention key and value. This is must and should mandatory. Key and value, the name has to be available with key and value. When you are using implicit option, then this is must and should. Why? Because the parameter name system will identify whatever the values available in key as a context variables. I mean parameters, whatever the values available inside the value column, it will consider as a value instead of parameter name. So by the name, it will identify which is parameter name, which is value. So try to maintain the key and value, the same names. So I created the ETL context variable and it has 5 values: username, password, hostname, port number, service name. Now, in the place of from file, I'm selecting from database. Now, in the database, when I selected from database, first option is I need to provide the table name. So what is the table name? ETL underscore context underscore ETL context underscore VARIABLES. ETL context variables is a table name I have used, and this table is available in which database? Here you can see list of the database which are available. You can select. Mine is available in Oracle, so I'm selecting Oracle. And what is the host name? Local host. What is the port number? 1521. What is the database name? DWHPROD. And what is the username? BISAMPLE. And password is, edit this and provide the password BISAMPLE. Okay. So I provided all the details of the database and I provided the table. So now system can consider the values from this table instead of file. When you select the file, you need to have values in a file. But right now, I want to get the values from a table, and table is available in Oracle database. So all the required details I provided, and I provided the table name. Click on apply. So right now, all the values it is trying to get from the table level. And here, let's add the username also right now. I want to add username. Yes. Try to maintain the same name, same parameter name, how you defined in the table. In the table, I have the username as username, then I'm using the same name. Host name, username, service name. So I used the implicit context option using a table. BA sample cannot be resolved to a variable. Something happened. BA sample cannot be resolved to a variable. Let me consider it as context dot username. But this may not be there. Let me add here. Yes. Why BA sample is considered as a variable? BA sample is used context. I used everywhere context. I used context. Okay. Uh, all the values are available here. Username, password. Okay. Key value pair, local host. BA sample cannot be used as a variable. Edit this. Edit project properties. Let me see. ETL, everything is looking good. AWS ETL context variables. Let me see this. Yep, it's working. It is available in BA sample, DWH PROD, localhost port number, BI. Here, this has to be in double quotes. Why? Because string has to be always in double quotes. Otherwise, system will try to consider it as a variable. So system is providing the error. That was the reason. That was the reason. As BA sample is available without double quote, system is trying to consider it as a variable, and as there is no variable with BA sample, system is trying to error it out. Always use double quotes. Yes. I did not allocate any values to these variables, but right now the values are getting allocated using a database. Okay, using a database table. How it is getting allocated? We are trying to maintain the same names which are available in the key. If you are maintaining a different name, then it cannot allocate a value to that variable. Clear? So always we need to maintain the same name how you are defined in the key section, the parameters. You need to identify the same name always. I hope the implicit allocation is clear. Let us see explicit. Basically, explicit in the sense we will allocate the values in each and every ETL job, so that each and every ETL job we can decide a different dynamic value. Instead of fixing it at project level, you can allocate your own values for each and every ETL job. So this is implicit. Let me create one more standard job. Job underscore context 2. I'm creating the job name as job underscore context 2. Okay. And here Instead of allocating the values from this implicit, I want to change this option. I want to change, I don't want to allocate the values from this implicit context load. I don't want to do. Here you can see whenever you are selecting the option, the T context load, basically you are allocating the values to T context load, implicit T context we call it as. That means whatever the variables or parameters you are defining here, those will be allocated to T context. Okay, right now I did not select implicit, that means T context load is empty. Then if I want to allocate at job level, then we can use T context load at job level. Instead of at project level, you can use the T context load at job level. So I'm using T context load. Now, if you see this T context load is empty, it doesn't have anything. T context load is empty. It doesn't have anything. Then how can I pass my parameters to this T context? Either the way is using key and value approach and using a file. Basically, you can allocate two ways, either at table level or else at file level. So, and implicit, I don't want to do, I want to do at ETL job level. So if you want to allocate the values from a file, then what you have to take? TDB input, T file input delimited. Why? Because my file, if you see, it is a comma separated. Every file is a comma separated or pipe separated or tab separated will be there. So all this we will go for T delimited. For file, we will use option called T file delimited. Input we have to take. Why? Because I want to get the values from the file, then we have to. Always if you want to read, then we will use T input delimited. Yes. Then where is our data? It is available in a file. By default, you will get this in every system, whenever you are trying to create a job. By default, you will get this. If you select file input delimited, it will get automatically. Right now, I'm changing this, and my details are available in connection details. And it is comma separate, and there is no header. Why? Because I did not have any header. If you see, the values are allocated directly. There is no header for this. If you want to have header, then change this to key value. Now I have the header. Key as a header, value as a header for these columns. Then you need to enable header. Yes, I have a header. First row is header. And this is not semicolon separated. It is comma. Each and every field is separated by comma. So you have to select comma. Okay, now I selected the file. I selected the comma. Now these values has to be allocated to T context load. So now your T context load will have all the parameters and its values from this file. And these are allocated during runtime. If you have an error, it will throw error. Yes, key is not considered as a file because in T file input delimited, you will not get the column names automatically. You have to add them. But in T context, always you will have the column names. You can say key and value. By default, you will get these names. So here, I want to add the column names. When I added the file and I selected the field separator, I selected the header, but I did not add how many columns are available in that file and the column names. Add those manually. My value is key and one more value is value. These are my column names. Now the column names are available. Whatever the column, it will be allocated to context load. So this is manually you are allocating in particular ETL job, not at project level. Whether it is working or not, see 5 rows are allocated to context. Whether it is working or not, how we can do? Basically, you can take a table. In the previous example, how we have seen the same thing. You can copy paste from the previous table. You can copy paste from the previous this one. You can copy and you can paste it here. Or else you can add the table manually and you can allocate all the variables. Now added the variables. Okay, now these are the variables and I maintain the same as parameter name which are allocated to T context. Now run this. Password cannot be resolved. The reason is I copied the job which has all the variables, but I did not add those variables in the context. This has to be added. Now this context doesn't have any value. It will utilize whatever the available with the same name in tcontextload. If it having a parameter, that value will be allocated here. If it has with the same name inside tcontextload, if we have a parameter, allocated a parameter using a file we are allocating, if it has a same parameter name in the tcontextload, whatever the value allocated to that parameter, it will get allocated to this variable. You can call parameter or variable, anything is fine. Network adapter could not establish the connection. Something went wrong. Let us see in the database how the values, username, BA, sample, all are looking good. Let me do this one. I want to execute this first, then I want to execute this. Then what we have to do? Right click here, trigger sub job. Okay. That means if this job is okay, then only I need to run the EMP. Then what I have to do? Trigger sub job. Okay. Why? Because both are starting at the same time. In that cases, what happens while doing the execution of this, maybe few parameters may not have values. Why? Because it is still both are started at the same time. So right now I selected, what is the option we selected? You can delete this and reselect again. Right click here, trigger. Trigger indicates whether it has to run, what it has to do. There are three options, trigger. You can write an if statement. You can write on sub job okay, component okay. The difference between component okay, sub job okay, I will let you know in the further classes. Don't worry. Right now I'm taking sub job. Sub job in the sense this entire is called sub job. This one is called component. If you select a component okay, then what happens? Once the data is extracted from the file, that means this component is successful. Immediately this will start. But I want to start only after extracting, after inserting into tcontext, then only this has to start. This entire is called one job. Input limited, input delimited, and context is together is called a job. So these two components I want to execute first. Then basically you have to select sub job, okay, not component, okay. I'm selecting sub job, okay, then I'm selecting here. So I'm allocating values from a file to context, then see here. Earlier we got error, network adapter error, because both started at the same time. So this is like allocating values from a file to the context load. Basically, if you have a set of parameters and you don't have values to that set of parameters, then what you have to do? You have to maintain key value pair in a table and you allocate all the set of parameters to this. And those you need to allocate to tcontextload. The purpose of tcontextload is holding all the variables or parameters. And it can be, and you can add the context variable blindly to your job without allocating a value. So whatever the value allocated to tcontextload, it will reutilize and it will execute the job. So here tcontextload plays a major role, holding all the parameters and values so that the value can be reutilized in this context variable. So this is one of the advantage. But here we pass the values from a file. But if you have the values from a table, then you can have a different name. It is fine, but you need to make sure that, example, if your column name is different, you have written my column name as parameter name, then provide an alias name as key. If you have value as parameter underscore value, then provide an alias name as value, then provide the table. So you can go this approach. When you have a different column name, then you can go this approach. You can consider alias name for that parameter, then you can go. Right now, my column names are available with key and value, so I'm not changing anything. I'm doing this. Okay. So right now, instead of file, I want to allocate the values. I want to allocate the values using a table. So here tdb input. I selected tdb input. Just place the cursor. or you can pull this one from the right side from palette. All recently utilized will be there. Just you can drag and drop. And here, or you can place the cursor in the designer, write TDB input, T database input, basically. It reads the rows from a database table. Now, what is this database? There are so many databases. You can select what database it is, Oracle, Snowflake, what exactly? I'm selecting Oracle. I'm selecting Oracle. Click on apply. Then connection details. Host name, local host, database name. Oh, sorry, it should be inside double quotes. Again, we are doing the same mistake. Database name is DHPROD and username is BI sample. Password BI sample, BI sample. Password is BI sample. So in the T context, we are not adding any schema. Whatever the values available, how many rows are there, those many parameters it will load. How many parameters, how many are there here, those many parameters will be loaded here. So right now, my table name. What is the table name? ETL context variables. And if you have the query, you can take the query. Okay, I consider right now. Okay, guess schema. Let's see why, because I don't want to add the columns manually. I can get the schema from the database table. How many columns are there in your table? Those many columns will be added to your edit schema with the data type, etc. So you can click on guess schema. And it is not getting added. The reason is the table I have written manually. Maybe that was the reason. Local host port number, everything is correct. Or else you can go by query approach. You can place the query inside double quotes, key value context. Now you can click on guess schema. Why? Because table I have to edit and I need to add manually, but I added copy pasted here. See here, I got it. That was the reason earlier it was not able to get the schema. Right now, when you have written the query, you got the schema. Instead of writing the table name manually here, what you have to do, you need to go here, then add it from here. But instead, I'm going a query approach where I have maintained key value. So now my schema also I got as key value. Okay. Now I'm allocating. And I want to execute this first, then only I want to execute my sub job. So this is the way how we allocate the values to the context variables using a database table. There are multiple ways, implicit, explicit, as I told, something is not working, value cannot be resolved or is not a field. Basically what happened is the schema name, let's see, here it is considered as a key, here it is considered as a capital key. So let me change this one, edit schema, I'm considered as key, I'm considered as value. Oh, no, this is not the issue. There is one more issue. There is one more issue. See here, again it will throw an error. Again, maybe it throws an error. Let's see. Yeah, may not throw error. Let's see. Yeah, it is not throwing error. It is working fine. Yes. So here, the key name is in capital letter, and in the schema, in the T context load, it has taken the capital letter, but here it is lowercase. It is in uppercase. This is in lowercase. It was not able to match. It thrown error. So right now I provided both TDB input schema name and T context. Both are in the same format right now, column names in lowercase. So now it was working. In EMP, I have the variables utilized in the place of connection details, but these variables are empty without values. So I'm using a T context load. Whatever the variables I have, the same variables I consider as a separate row, and this I'm allocating to T context load. And if you don't have username here, for example, I'm deleting a column called delete ETL context variable. let me update, or else let me update it. Instead of deleting, we can update also. Update ETL context variable. I'm setting key equal to parameter name and changing it as username D, where key equal to username. So I updated. That means I don't have a parameter with username. Instead, I have it as username D. If you execute this, I have a value called parameter with username D. But here you have a context variable as username. Both are not matching. Okay. Now let us see what error it throws. I did not allocate the value to the username field, and even in context variable T context load, I'm getting a parameter as username D. Both are not matching. So definitely it has to throw error. One is invalid username password. The reason is it is not allocated a value. Why? Because context variable, I have the variable name as username, but parameter here I have the value as username D. I'm correcting it. I have username now instead of username D, which is matching with this parameter. So now it should run. So this is the main big advantage of the context variable. Basically, context variable purpose is to allocate. Basically, wherever you have hard-coded filters, all those filters can be replaced with variables. Invalid username, password, login denied. Username, be a sample, password. So it is not able to identify is invalid username password. So that means it is not able to get the value to this user name. Okay. And here, let me check. I did not execute commit, might be. I did not execute commit. Maybe that was the reason. I changed it, but I did not execute. When you don't execute, still it will consider the old value. Let me cross check now. Updated, but I did not execute the commit. Let me see. Yes. Now it is one. So these are the two ways, implicit, explicit. In both places, we use T context load. Explicit in the sense we are allocating the values to the T context load while execution of the job. I mean, inside ETL job. Whereas implicit, you are allocating the values at project level. So everywhere for every ETL job, you can utilize those. It will be allocated by default. And here in every ETL job, you need to maintain a step for the allocation of the parameters and values, key and values to the T context load. This is the difference between implicit and explicit. But the purpose is wherever you have hard-coded value, those values can be replaced with the variables. That is a big advantage of context variable. And all the related variables, you can group it and you can call it as context group. So the main advantage of context group is ease of use. You can drag and drop in every ETL job easily. So all the list of the variables. Example, think that there are 100 variables which are related, and instead of adding one by one variable to all the ETL jobs, you can allocate those 100 variables to one group and you can drag and drop. Automatically, you will get all the variables to that ETL job. That is the main advantage. So here, I can drag how many context group I want, I can add here. I hope this is helping. If you have any questions, you can mention in the comment section. I will answer those. And soon we will be starting a workshop related videos as well, which is nothing but in real time in stuff. Right now we are seeing on EMP, right? In workshop, we will see how to load the data from, we will consider two databases like Oracle database or Snowflake or SQL Server. And the transactional data, how we can convert into OLAP. And in that case, the data warehouse, we always consider table as a dimension and fact. So all those explanation and how we do the development of a data warehouse step by step, we will see in those workshop sessions. And you can subscribe my channel. And if you have any questions, you can mention in the comment. I will try to reply. Thank you.